In Pride's Hollow, there are two traditions you just don't mess with at Christmas: the birth of Jesus and the annual Christmas auction. Not necessarily in that order. The auction, by tradition, is always hosted by a committee of ladies over at the First Baptist Church on Lexington. Not to be confused with the First Baptist Church over on Main, which has a bigger steeple and 21 more members, in case you're wondering. First Baptist Lexington has 2 services and the whisperings of a new gymnasium. The one on Lexington was actually, well, technically built first, but the one on Main says they had the idea first, and it won't take you long into that conversation to understand why there are 2 in the first place. Don't even get us started on the Presbyterians, if you're Baptist, please whisper that word, who just started staging their own live nativity scene, which was Lexington's idea in the first place. And who ever heard of a basset hound playing a camel? Anyway, the stated objective of the annual Christmas auction is to raise money for the needy, or financially challenged, as they currently call it whenever they can remember. Oh, the town's been working really hard to improve its politically correct dialogue. Or should I say Merlene, from over at Merlene, Verlene, and Shirlene's House of Beauty, is working hard. The rest of us just don't want to get her started, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's the stated objective of the auction. The understated objective is to be the one who provides the item that results in the highest bid. Every year, folks go to great lengths trying to outdo each other, some taking it to the extreme by submitting more than one item and therefore competing against themselves. One year, Buford Diggs submitted 4 items, and he got so worked up trying to keep up with it all that he started having chest pains. Turns out it was just the chili, but still. So far, the highest auction item in history has gone to Mary Ann Mayweather for the 4-piece set of Elvis dinner plates and matching mugs that she donated. Oh, she's got 14 more sets at home, which at the time held high value since he was rumored to still be alive. Now, well, we're all pretty sure that even if Elvis did fake his own death, he's surely dead by now, and so the plates are even more valuable. Posthumous value, as Mary Ann keeps telling us. She says she read this article that claims Elvis had this long-lost sister who lives just 2 counties over in an undisclosed location. But we think she's just trying to raise the value of those plates. Her husband says it's a secure investment and is counting on it to fund his retirement. Funny how it's always his retirement, not our retirement. But it makes sense if you know Mary Ann Mayweather. She's been walking around for years in this overblown cloud of confidence that her record for the highest bid is airtight and can't be broken. Only this year, it was. And nobody even saw it coming, except maybe for that chief auctioneer up in the sky who can be clever when he wants to make a point. This year, I was on the auction committee, which is shocking considering I wasn't even a member over at First Baptist Lexington. Up until now, all the volunteer roles have been strictly confined to church members and voted on by the WOW, Women of the Word, committee. But this year, Merlene suggested it wasn't politically correct for a church to be so inclusive and that they should be reaching out to get the community more involved. So they reached out to me, not because they saw me as a valued asset, but because they knew I wouldn't have an opinion and therefore be a threat to what has taken them years to build. And I didn't have any ties to the other denominations, which was a plus. My job was to wash dishes. The auction was always held in conjunction with the covered dish supper. And in Pride's Hollow, the covered dish is the mecca for Baptist women, some claiming it had its roots dating back all the way to the Last Supper. I have a hard time picturing Jesus eating deviled eggs off a silver tray beside a plastic jug for donations. This year, the ladies decided to increase their marketing efforts, which up until this point consisted of a flyer posted on the bulletin board in the coffee shop that's been hanging there for 5 years. But Merlene said it was time to keep up with the rest of the world, and the auction needed a virtual presence. The WOW committee agreed, even though not one of them really knew what that meant. Enter in the auction Facebook page and Merlene's tireless dedication to get more likes. And she wasn't afraid to use Jesus to do it. The WOW committee had matching pink t-shirts made that said, "A like for the Facebook page is a like for Jesus." Wow, so now Jesus had his own Facebook page. Nice. I wondered what the selfies would be like. Here's me parting the Red Sea. Look who I ran into on the plane. It's Moses. Just bought these new sandals at half off. Score. Oh, look, Jesus is inviting you to play Candy Crush. Or to private message me, please bow your head. On December 5th, he's probably posted, my birthday, hashtag aging gracefully. Oh, could you imagine if he could see our Facebook walls? We'd be like, take down the wine. Anyway, Marlene's marketing plan was to send the ladies out on foot to knock on doors and ask people to like the page. I can only imagine those conversations, as a good portion of Pride's Hollow still felt like computers were spawned from the devil himself. But at the end of the day, well, people did as Marlene asked, me included, just in case the big social media guy in the sky was into Facebook and this was a test. I'm still waiting for him to accept my friend request. I heard he declined scooters. Presbyterian. As it all turned out, attendance was down this year by one person, the pastor's wife, who couldn't figure out how to get on the Facebook. The rest of the people were already planning on coming before they were guilted into obtaining a virtual presence for Jesus. You're supposed to bring your item to the church 2 weeks before the auction, but some wait until the very last minute so nobody finds out what their item is and tries to bring in something better. We get everything from homemade cakes to knitted blankets to regifted items that people can't find a place for. It's pretty much how I furnished my first apartment, and the reason I now have a life-size ceramic rooster that holds rolling pins. I keep it in the trunk of my car because there's no room for it in my kitchen. I really should get rid of it, but I keep meaning to learn how to bake. The auction is always held after the meal because, well, food is never second on the agenda in Pride's Hollow. That's blasphemy. The buffet was your typical First Baptist fare, 3 versions of macaroni and cheese, assorted trays of deviled eggs, fried chicken in buckets, various unidentifiable casseroles topped with crushed potato chips or crackers that are the Sworn family's favorite, and 4 desserts for every main course. There are unspoken rules for a Baptist buffet, which explains why my Greek salad was accidentally left in the church refrigerator and why the silver-haired brigade gave me a scowl when I put deviled eggs on the wrong side of the chicken. I tell you, hell hath no fury like church women whose buffet order is disrupted. They're like mama bears, and you mess with that dish and you are messing with their cub. I'm pretty sure they would have shunned Jesus himself if he dared to bring potato salad in a plastic container to the Last Supper. I mean, who does such a thing? Has he not heard of Corningware? Was he born in a barn, for heaven's sake? While people were eating, the auction items just gleamed from the table up front. This year we had quite the mashup of department store meets yard sale meets knitting frenzy, with a healthy dose of carbs and sugar on pie tins, cake plates, and in jars with homemade labels and fabric tops lined in ribbon. I was pretty sure if the world ended, we could all survive in here for at least a week with all these baked goods. Not a bad way to go, leaving the world in a diabetic coma. The auction buzz had already started as people speculated which items would go for the highest amount. Mary Ann Mayweather had donated a weekend at her house. She called it a B&B retreat, complete with a home-cooked breakfast and a tour of her Elvis dinnerware collection that explained where every piece was purchased, the Elvis real-life fact that corresponded to every scene, and the collection's current estimated value, according to her husband. We all agreed it was brilliant, and that Mary Ann was probably going to win again, especially since her husband Hank was the auctioneer, which I figured was probably a complete conflict of interest, but decided not to bring it up for fear they'd let old man Coots do it again this year. I don't care if he was a public speaker back in the day and quick on his feet. You should not let a man with denture issues run an auction. That thing lasted for hours. It kind of reminded me of that African tribal clicking language. Maybe he should move there and help him auction off beads or something. If he keeps self-tanning at the rate he's going, he'll fit right in. I always have fun watching them auction off the items because there's always something in the lineup that is completely unidentifiable. And then the auctioneer has to sell it without a clue as to what it is. It's very entertaining to watch. This year was no exception, thanks to the knitting skills of Esther Sims, halfway to blind and, well, more than halfway to sauced, which explains why her grandchildren get sweaters with one arm longer than the other or missing a neck hole. This year, she had knitted something that was about 4 feet long. It was shaped like a tube, closed off on one end, and adorned in feathers, which looked suspiciously real and fresh. Her item went for $55, thanks to grandchildren who want to be left in her will and have a closet of whacked out items to prove it. When the auctioneer shouted, "Sold!" I think I was the only one who caught the gleam in Esther's eye as she turned to me and winked. Her secret is safe with me. The blinking Budweiser light nobody would admit to bringing was purchased for $10. Jenny's Jamboree, 6 flavors of canned jam with the CD of Jenny's son playing hymns on the banjo, was a crowd favorite, going for $14. Bitsy's homegrown medicinal brew that tastes suspiciously like whiskey went for $25. As items were auctioned, it became clear that Mary Ann's retreat was probably going to be the highest bid, and so it was saved for last to create suspense. To no one's surprise, it brought in $200, beating her own record and adding another layer to her cloud of confidence. Nobody seemed to catch the irony that the lady who bought it lives next door to Mary. They were just about to declare the auction officially over when little Roxy walks up to the table and says, "Well, what about my item?" Roxy is one of the girls in my dance class, a shy 7-year-old who has seen things in life a 7-year-old should not have to see. She just moved to Pride's Hollow about a year ago, so her grandmother could take care of her. Her own parents just disappeared one day. I don't know the whole story. Shocking if you know the light speed of gossip in this town, but apparently their disappearance was a good thing, if you know what I mean. We were surprised to see her up front, because most of the town has never even heard her speak. I'm her dance teacher, and she never talks in class to me or the other students. Oh, which reminds me, we should probably have another rehearsal for the Christmas recital. 10 students, and only 2 of them have any potential. The rest, not so much, me included, but that's a story for another day, how I got roped into teaching Pinky Lee's School of Dance. No, this moment was about Roxy, walking up to the front of the auction, holding a piece of paper that she apparently had been waiting patiently to submit. It was against the rules. You're supposed to have your items submitted before the auction started. But there she was, standing there holding a piece of white paper and looking quite earnest. It was one of those moments when people, without thinking, just do the right thing. I wish there were more of those moments in life. Hank clears his throat and announces that we have one more item for the auction and asks Roxy to please tell the audience about her item, since he wasn't quite sure what it was supposed to be. Or more accurate to say, we all knew exactly what it was. It just wasn't anything of any apparent value. Roxy stood up there and proudly held up a drawing she'd made herself on white paper with crayons. It was a drawing just like hundreds of others that have lined the walls of countless church Sunday schools and refrigerators across the world. It was a picture of a manger, the morning Jesus was born, a scene that has been depicted by crayons, markers, glitter, dried pasta, wood, plastic yarn ornaments, greeting cards, made-for-TV movies, sanctuary stages, and black velvet masterpieces from coast to coast. If Christmas could be boiled down to one moment, that would be it. Roxy had taken some creative liberties with her art. The barn was purple. The camel was bigger than the barn. The desert had flowers in it. The wise men had on sneakers. Joseph had arm tattoos, and I'm pretty sure Mary was Asian. In truth, it was probably the worst depiction of a manger scene in the history of crayons. But don't tell that to Roxy. As Roxy held up her drawing, her entire body shivered in excitement. In one moment, we watched her go from this shy, meek little girl who cringed at loud noises to this proud artist unveiling her masterpiece to the world. She pointed out each color and brushstroke as if they had been spun from gold. She cradled the paper as if it were made of fine china. In Roxy's world, there was nothing more magical than this drawing and this moment and this story. Because for Roxy, it wasn't really about the paper or the art being the sum of its colors. It was about the story it represented through Roxy's eyes. And the more she saw it, the more we saw it too. The drawing, it began to change right in front of our eyes, thanks to the eyes of the one who held it. As she pointed out the baby Jesus, we didn't notice the purple mohawk she'd given him. We felt the awe and wonder of how she talked about her king. And I wondered when I had lost that same reverence. As she showed us the wise men bearing gifts, we didn't notice the iTunes gift cards they carried. We thought about how far they were willing to walk just to be part of this one moment in history. And I wondered if I would have been willing to walk so far. If I had been near, would I still have been too busy to notice him? Nobody pointed out that the angel floating above the stable had 3 wings, and we were too busy wondering if that angel was out there right now, still watching over us. Have I been too loud to miss the faint whisper of 1,000 angels' wings beating around me? As Roxy stood up there, proudly sharing the story of her Savior, I wondered when I had lost that courage, the boldness of a child who would not trade that light for the approval of others or those who might not see its value or worth, or who will scoff at the silliness of such a story. When Roxy had finished explaining the drawing, Hank asked her what she thought its value should be so they could begin the bidding. In a solemn voice, Roxy repeated the words her grandmother had whispered to her. It's not about what you have to give. It's about whose name you give it in. Suddenly, every item on that table paled in comparison to the simple piece of paper and the words spoken by a 7-year-old who would probably never become a professional artist. It wasn't a drawing for sale. It was the story behind it, story of hope, the story of peace, its value wrapped up in the name of the one who brings it. For it was clear that day that the picture was not sent from a little girl, that the great auctioneer in the sky had broken through the noise and the clutter with little more than a handful of crayons, just like a baby boy in a manger who broke through the dark to bring the light of a king. That day, every person in town made a bid. But they weren't bidding on a drawing. They were bidding on hope. They were bidding on peace. They were bidding on love. They were bidding for their souls. And you just can't put a price tag on that. It was the highest priced auction item in history. It was money that went to the needy and a message that everyone needed. And now, thanks to Roxy, every person in town has received their own copy, drawn by hand, unique and original to each, that has been hung on a wall, framed on a mantle, tucked into a Bible or folded into a wallet, or tucked behind a cherished Elvis dinner plate. Each is a constant reminder of the highest priced item to ever sell at the Pride's Hollow First Baptist Church Christmas auction. Yeah. Merry Christmas. And may you always find wonder in a simple drawing made from crayons, and even more wonder in the name of the one who brings it. As the words of that beloved Christmas carol so beautifully stated, then he appeared, and the soul felt its worth.